This podcast and content posted by Dr. Judith Joseph is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnoses or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.
Cheri Garcia is the founder of Cornbread Hustle, a staffing agency for second chances that has placed more than 2,500 people with criminal records into jobs. Cheri is passionate about helping people in recovery to find transformation through employment or entrepreneurship. And she was inspired to do this work because she overcame alcohol dependence and is currently more than 5 years sober. Cheri has benefited from her own second chances in life, and her efforts to help those in recovery has landed her in the news and media with over 150,000 followers on social platforms.
I threw a sober New Year's Eve party. It completely sold out. It got on the news and everything of sober people coming together on New Year's Eve.
On this episode of The Vault, we talk about the struggles of being sober over the holidays and ways to cope with anhedonia.
Anhedonia is something that I study in my lab, and it's a lack of pleasure and a lack of interest, and it's closely tied to substance dependence.
It does help to name it. That gave me a lot of freedom just now that you named it for me.
She also recently founded another company, Junk Hustlers, to help entrepreneurs in recovery to become business owners while also cleaning the environment.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today, Cheri.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time now, and I have to say your feed is so inspiring. It just really gives me goosebumps. Tell us about your inspiration for the content that you create.
Wow, I didn't know you have been following me, so thank you for saying that. So when I was 6 months sober, I knew that I either needed to tell people about it or I was probably going to drink. I didn't think I could make it a year if I didn't. It was kind of like guardrails for me to share with others. So I turned on my camera and I said, hey, everybody, my name's Cheri and I own a second chance company, but I need a second chance myself. I recently got a DWI and I have a breathalyzer in my car and I realized that I have to stop drinking. And so I just hit my 6-month mark. And I think at that time I had like 2,000 followers or something, and I was terrified to post that. But so many people messaged me saying that they were also suffering in silence, and they were asking me about my experience, and eventually it grew to 150,000 followers. And so it inspired me, and I felt empowered to continue to share my journey because I felt like, okay, I'm pretty good at being vulnerable so others can process their feelings without feeling attacked, if that makes sense.
Well, I just think that's so beautiful, and really speaking your truth and asking your community to help you and to support you allowed you to support them. So I'm in awe of your journey, and tell me more about your company and how it's changing lives for so many people.
So I do have a staffing agency for second chances, meaning we help people coming out of prison and people in recovery find meaningful employment. We started 8 years ago. We've placed almost 3,000 people with criminal records. Now we've expanded and created a junk hauling company. It's powered by Cornbread Hustle, so we're doing all the staffing and marketing behind it. And we're just every single day, one day at a time, on a mission to just break the stigma and overcome barriers for people who are coming out of prison that need to figure out a way to make a living and create generational change.
Now, I know that a lot of people are incarcerated because of things that they did under the influence or when they were intoxicated. And, one of the challenges in mental health is that a lot of people are in prison who actually just need to be in treatment. How do people find your organization? How do they make their way to get support from your organization?
And I agree with you on that. We actually have a guy that worked for us while he was waiting for his sentencing. He was actually a veteran, and he did have some PTSD, and he had drank too much, and he was in a blackout, and he assaulted a police officer, and he received 10 years in prison. He just completed 5 years, and they're granting him parole, and we kept his job open for him. But he would be an example of somebody that's never been in trouble in his entire life. He had a really fruitful career as a healthcare recruiter before he had even come to us. And I do see that as a failure for our system. I do believe that he could have used some support and treatment. But there's only so much we can do. So what we do at Cornbread Hustle is we advocate for the person who got out of prison, and we look at their criminal record, and we go to the employer and we share with them what exactly happened and what has happened since the incident or incidents. Sometimes it's a lot of different incidents, and what they learned in prison or what job they had in prison, and how people find us. We actually have a 12-week starting over program that I created, just like my LinkedIn videos where I share my own experience and my own stories, and I try to get very vulnerable. I do that for 12 weeks straight, and I share 1 week at a time some of the things that helped me when I was trying to not only get sober, but transform my life. Because there was a lot of feelings of wanting to straddle the fence, not let go of my old behaviors completely, but I still wanted some new behaviors. It was a very lonely journey because I didn't know how to find, not only did I not know how to find new friends, I wasn't interested in those friends. They seemed boring to me because I came from a background of chaos and destruction. And so I had a lot of unlearning to do. And we created that program so people in prison can learn some of those things, to understand what a toxic relationship looks like, what guilt versus shame looks like, maladaptive coping mechanisms, what a trigger feels like and what to do when you're triggered. And the last 4 weeks of the program is, okay, and so you want a job too, right? Here's how you go about getting a job. Because when I started Cornbread Hustle, I wasn't sober yet. I'm only 5 years sober. I started Cornbread Hustle 8 years ago. And so I was kind of thinking that a job and success could just fix somebody, because I had that problem where I thought success could just fix me. When I had to go through the real feelings of not using any substances to numb my feelings, that's when I said, okay, this journey has a lot more to do than just getting successful and having money. Because I learned that anything that I got, I sabotaged anyway. So we teach a lot about self-sabotage and just different signs to look out for in yourself to have that self-awareness.
I'm so glad that you said that, because as a psychiatrist and working with people for so many years, I see the same thing. Like, there's this fantasy that, okay, if you have a job, or if you get married, or if you're finally in school, somehow that situation will change you. But change starts within, and understanding what it is you're self-medicating, understand the pain that you're trying to numb, understand what you're trying to outrun from your past. That's where it's helpful, because if you can identify the root, sometimes if you can identify the root, you can get to a point of coping better. You can get to a point of using evidence-based skills to regulate your emotions, to deal with these triggers. And also, one of the common fantasies that I hear in practice is like, okay, once I become sober, once I finish a program, that's it. But, I constantly find myself working with my clients to be like, this is a lifelong journey. There's going to be times where you may actually no longer be sober, and we'll deal with that. But I don't want you to think that, you're damaged or you're less than, or you're not worthy because, things don't turn out the way that you hope. So I'm so glad that you shared that, that you started this incredible company and this movement when you were still not sober, right? I think that's powerful in itself. What are some of those tips that you share on LinkedIn and in your community and within your organization that have helped you on your path and on your journey?
So one thing for me is I always wanted to arrive. I wanted to graduate this whole alcoholism thing or codependency thing or master never avoiding toxic relationships. And it's only just recently at 5 years sober that I realized that I gotta stop thinking that I'm going to finally arrive, because now I'm dealing with perfectionism at that point and striving for perfection when I can't have that. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing that I've had to go through, even harder than getting sober, I don't want to say harder than losing my father and grieving, but more of a journey, attempting to be in a healthy relationship. Because it's one thing to work on myself and become the better version of myself, and it's me versus me. But it's a whole nother story when you're like, oh, I'm in a relationship with somebody that might be worth looking at changing myself for. And, in the past, because of my upbringing and just where I come from, I've been in toxic relationships where it wasn't with anybody that I felt the need to change. Neither of us changed. So it was just constant conflict and chaos. And that was very familiar for me. It's very unfamiliar for me to have healthy, not only a relationship romantically, but navigate having healthy friendships, healthy business partnerships, because my life before sobriety and God was just complete chaos. So to break it down to simple tips in the very beginning, I will tell you that I was suicidal. I would even say the whole first 2 years of my recovery. Now, there were great days and there were terrible days. It wasn't like I was constantly thinking about suicide. I just had so many moments of depression, deep depression, that I had more of this suicidal ideation, right? Where I didn't want to live, but I also didn't want to die. I was just existing, and it felt very meaningless. And a big reason for that is because I refused community, and I kept trying to do it on my own. I thought I was smarter than alcoholism and what everybody told me that I need to do or should do. I wanted to figure it out for myself. I wanted to read a book and learn about alcoholism and conquer it so I could drink normal again. So I didn't want to find friends and get in a community that was going to hold me accountable to not drink ever again in my life. I was trying to figure out how to just do it normally. And the first 6 months, I remember making a post saying, so what gives with this anxiety? What do you guys do without alcohol? Do you put CBD oil in a bath and just waller in it? And so many people were commenting, reach out to me, message me. And it was people who also had faced getting sober and this challenges of early recovery. So I would say first and foremost, just if you really think you can do it alone, just don't. It's not worth it. It could have been so much easier on me. Also, movie theaters helped me a lot because, especially as an entrepreneur, my work day could easily end at 2 or 3 o'clock. And there was always a reason that I could justify a happy hour. for networking or closing a deal or whatever I would justify it for. I'd have my laptop open at the bar and get going on a vodka soda. So it was really hard for me to know what to do. And I didn't have new friends yet. And I couldn't hang out with the friends I was hanging out with because even though they didn't have a problem, they did partake in drinking, and there was no way I could sit there and not partake. So movie theaters really helped me from the hours of like 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. because it's a place that I can go sit at and let time pass, and I can walk out the movie theater and it's dark outside. So now that means I can go to bed. For me, going to bed helped. If I go to bed, I make it another day sober. And then just, there were times that I had to take it even one drink at a time. A lot of people say one day at a time. When I did start going to networking meetings and trying to do things to advance my career, I still had to be in environments where there was alcohol. And there were times that I told myself, maybe the next drink I can drink, but not this drink. And I'd have a Red Bull or a club soda and lime. And as I said that 3 times, by that time, other people kind of started slurring a little or saying the same thing over and over or speaking loudly. And instead of wanting that drink, I started feeling empowered that I didn't drink. And I felt like I knew what I was talking about, and I felt more poised. So that helped me as well, going one drink at a time instead of focusing on one day at a time when it came to events.
I love how you keep on bringing up people, right? Because a lot of times it's really who we're around that we mirror. And if you're around people, not necessarily people who have the same challenges, but people who are engaging in behaviors that you don't want to engage in, then it's really difficult to say no, to resist temptation. And I just wonder, because I know that alcohol for so many of my clients and people that I've seen across the years has been the way to feel like yourself, has been the way to deal with social anxiety, to be able to be in situations where you don't feel 100% comfortable. And the social aspect has been very, very challenging, right? And I wonder how you were able to navigate that. And, from the people that you see all the time and the people that you help every day, if you have any of those tips for navigating social situations where alcohol was, a form of a self-soothing behavior.
Yeah. So I remember I had a Halloween party for like 10 years in a row. And the last Halloween party I had was actually the last time I had even done hard drugs. I had got drunk enough to even do hard drugs. And I actually had probation that Monday. And I was about to get off probation for that DWI that I had. This is while I was the founder of Cornbread Hustle. And I had full intention to have that Halloween party without getting drunk. I thought I could just drink water in between a couple of drinks here and there, and by Monday I'll be fine for the drug test, which does also test for alcohol because of my probation restrictions. And that night I really realized, wow, well, not only did I not get drunk, I also did drugs because I was impaired. And that was October of 2018. December, Christmas Eve of 2018 was the last drink that I took. So that was when my mind had really started to change. And I knew at this point it's a problem. It's no longer a desire that maybe I want to get sober. Now it was, I think I have to. And I remember I was feeling the next year had rolled around. I was almost a year sober, and it was Halloween, and I was depressed. I felt like, is this what I got sober for? No Halloween party. I can't go to a Halloween party, because I knew what would happen if I had one. I played the tape rewind and drew on those experiences to not repeat that pattern. And so somebody suggested to me, they were like, well, why don't you throw a sober New Year's Eve party? And I was like, who will go to a sober New Year's Eve party? He was like, you would. You want to have a party, you want to have fun, and you're sober. And I just wasn't in a place where I could be around alcohol and party. So I thought, okay. So I did. I threw a sober New Year's Eve party. It completely sold out. It got on the news and everything. Wow. Of sober people coming together on New Year's Eve, toasting with apple cider. And it was a great time. And that really showed me that I can take control of my own life. And I can either feel sorry for myself and make myself out to be a victim of my circumstances, or I can create an environment that I can thrive in. And so I just, again, like I do a lot of rewinding and drawing from my own experiences. Even to this day, at 5 years sober, I will often rewind to that experience of the sober NYE party and just remember that if I'm starting to feel sorry for myself, because I still do, I feel sorry for myself every once in a while, and especially when business isn't going good or something really difficult is happening in my company, I find myself shaking my fist at the sky and saying, wow, God, I got sober. I turned my life over to you and I help people. But why does my life have to look like this? Why do I have to be lonely? Why do I have to be hurting? But it's pretty quick that I can turn that thinking around and realize that I have a lot to be grateful for. And even your most successful people that get to drink, that can drink, that have it all seemingly, share those same feelings of feeling sorry for themselves or feeling lonely. So I have to realize that it's not the fact that I can't drink that's putting me in that position. It's other things as well. And that's why I've done so much work around looking at things like codependency in my life, or, you know, that inner child, those wounds, man, those wounds are deep. And I'm still going through a lot of inner child work. That's actually why I joined a roller derby league. I was seeking something, a hobby. That's another tip. I had no hobbies. My hobby was to get drunk. I even remember trying to get on a dating platform, and I got so angry, and I remember bawling my head off because every single guy was saying, what do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do for fun? I was going to pull my hair out. It was nothing against them, but I was so angry on the inside because I was like, I don't know what I like to do for fun, okay? I work, and I used to drink, but now I can't drink, so I work. So I have nothing to offer you. And that's when I realized, okay, I never said that to anybody, but in my mind, right? And I was like, man, I need to figure out what I like to do. So I tried different hobbies. First, I wrote down a list of everything I loved to do as a kid. And I still have a list. I can pull it out at any time. It's like 100 different things that I like to do. It could be anything from taking a walk to cuddling with my dog to going to a movie to skating. And I know that at any time I can just go do that.
Well, what you're describing is anhedonia, which is really, anhedonia is something that I study in my lab. And it's a lack of pleasure and a lack of interest. And it's closely tied to substance dependence. And it's a symptom that we see in depression. It's present in schizophrenia. It's present in trauma. It's present in substance dependence. So people forget what it's like to enjoy things. They forget what brings them pleasure.
Can you say that word again?
And a lot of times you have to retrain your brain. It's anhedonia. Anhedonia. An means lack of. Hed means pleasure. And the onia is like the condition, it's the symptom. It's not a diagnosis, but it's a symptom. And it's present in a lot of mental health conditions, including substance dependence. And it's an issue because what you find is that people they're like, well, the only thing that makes me happy is getting drunk. The only thing that makes me happy is the substance, because their brain has been, changed to the point where the pleasure, the dopamine is different. And so you have to retrain your brain slowly over time to enjoy things that used to give you pleasure. So anhedonia is closely tied to this. Anhedonia is also closely tied to high functioning depression, what I study in my lab. And when you talk about perfectionism and sometimes becoming addicted to the work, right? Like, you trade in one behavior for another. One thing that used to be, you get pleasure from alcohol, but now you're getting this pleasure or this inability to get pleasure because you're constantly doing more and more and more to get the same high. It's just with the work, right? You continue to work, and there's no such thing as the work being done. You just continue working. And it's not like you enjoy it anymore. Similar to substances, it's not like you enjoy doing it anymore, but you don't like the withdrawal. You don't like the discomfort of not doing it. And that's what drives a lot of the behaviors. So understanding anhedonia and naming it and retraining your brain to find pleasure and joy in things that it once did, right? It's almost like you're learning to crawl again. Like when you see a kid crawling and then they fall and they laugh and they get up and do it again. For our higher level brains, we're like, okay, they're having fun doing something pretty basic, but we have to train our brains sometimes when we've become dependent on things and when we feel like we don't have control. We have to retrain our brains to enjoy this simple pleasure. So I work with a lot of mind-body work with my clients, and we sometimes just sit still and we'll just focus on our breathing, because you can enjoy breathing. You can enjoy sipping a cup of tea if you take the time to ground yourself and go through the senses and feel your body again and understand that, that you're worth it and that your experiences are worth it. Slowing down is worth it. So yeah, I totally see that tie between perfectionism and trading it in for another behavior, right? And I always ask my experts to name a time in their lives when everyone thought that they were doing so well. So on the outside, people are like, oh man, she's killing it. Like, I want to be like her. But you knew on the inside, you were like, wait, I don't have it all figured out. I'm actually struggling here. And how did you get through that?
I mean, now, my entire life, I'm pretty vulnerable on LinkedIn. And I share things that I'm going through. But it's constant support and outpouring of people saying, wow, you're killing it. You're amazing. And I do suffer with a lot of the imposter syndrome stuff because, again, it's probably, I'm still learning. I'm learning, especially this year, how to let myself enjoy things. And that's why you really blew my mind with what you just explained. I've never heard that term before. I'm actually embarrassed that I haven't. And I'm appreciative that you shared that with me.
Don't be.
Well, I think this is great information. It does help, Dr. Judith, to name it. That gave me a lot of freedom just now that you named it for me. But it has been, and especially with my history of meth addiction, that I did that drug when I was in high school, and I was severely addicted to it in high school. So in my formative years, I was changing the chemistry in my brain with a very toxic and addictive substance. And I don't know all the science behind meth addiction at all. I have zero education, but I often think to myself, how badly did that affect me today as it relates to that pleasure, to where it's very, very difficult for me to enjoy pleasure. And when I do enjoy something, it's so short-lived and it's hard for me to hold on to it. And so I have a hard time discerning or understanding, Is it me not allowing myself to be happy because I have that undeserving, unworthiness feeling on the inside? Or is it because my brain has been chemically altered at a young age and continued to be chemically altered, and I was dependent on substances for so long? So you gave me a lot to think about. But to answer your question, all the time, because I have such a battle in my own mind about, how should I feel? Am I happy? Am I sad? I don't know. Like, I know 5 years sober is a lot of time for a lot of people. And if you would have asked me when I was 5 days sober, if I thought I could achieve 5 years sober, I would have been like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see if I'm alive. But when you've done drugs and alcohol for so many years of your life, 5 years, I feel like a 5-year-old. So I feel like a 5-year-old with 150,000 LinkedIn followers of people seeking advice on how I grew my business. It's how I feel every single day. So to answer your question, I feel like that every day.
I think you're onto something there because, what I am learning in my research and what many, experts are seeing is that we have to redefine joy. Because if we teach people to become happy or look for when you're happy, I think we're sending people down a path that it does not exist. And like a 5-year-old, many of my adult clients are learning how to be 5 again. They're saying, okay, how do I enjoy the pleasure of a bath? Mm-hmm. Well, when we describe a bath, we don't think about happy, but what do we describe? We think of warm, we think of soothing, we think of relaxed, right? When we eat food, we're not thinking happy, we're thinking satisfied. So if you go to my website and you take the Anhedonia quiz, you'll see different sensations. And I would challenge people listening to redefine happy, right? Because if you're chasing happiness and joy, you may never find that. But if you focus on the sensations that make life worth living, like feeling rested, feeling soothed, feeling clean, those things that we take for granted. We teach a little kid those feelings. If we try and we really take the time to go back to that, I think we will overall become happier. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Where can we find you and follow you and see all of the wonderful things that you're doing?
So the easiest way is to just simply go to cornbreadhustle.com and you can contact us there. But we're all over social media, so it's pretty easy to find us.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much.